All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Unapologetic Leadership from Theory to Practice, a roundtable discussion brought to you by the National African American Insurance Association Boston chapter. My name is Christine Bell. I am the president of NAAIA Boston and also a senior specialty underwriter of management and professional liability at Philadelphia Insurance Company. First off, I would like to thank you for joining our program today. We're very excited for this discussion to begin. But first, I would like to thank our partner organizations, without whom this program would not be possible and from whom you will be hearing shortly. First, we have Cleary Insurance, Arbella Insurance Group, and last but not least, Philadelphia Insurance Company. We certainly want for this program to feel very conversational. And, we also want to appreciate and be mindful of your time this afternoon. So while we do have questions prepared for our panelists, I also invite you to ask any questions you may think of along the way in the chat box. We will try to get to as many of them as possible in the allotted Q&A time at the end of our planned questions. This is a safe space for us to engage in dialogue and to learn from each other. So please do not be shy when it comes to asking a question. With that, I would like to introduce our moderator for the program, David Williams. Dave is an accomplished corporate and underwriting executive with over 20 years of experience in both domestic and international markets, which has led to his current role as Chief Multinational Underwriting Officer at Liberty Mutual Insurance. We are also very lucky to have Dave currently serving on the NAAIA Boston Board of Directors. He also serves on the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation's Board of Trustees and is also a past president of the Professional Liability Underwriting Society. When he is not taking over the insurance world, Dave can be found at a hockey rink near you or spending time with his family. So with that, I will turn it over to Dave.
Thank you very much, Christine. And just to be clear, I'm on the JFK Library Board of Advisors, which is different than the trustee boards. That's okay, but
my apologies.
No apologies. It's an honor for me. And at Liberty Mutual, there's a great commitment to DEI. So I'm very honored to have this moderator role for NAAIA. And our title, as you know, is Unapologetic Leadership from Theory to Practice. So I thought it would be important to first have a conversation, a brief statement about unapologetic. And the textbook definition of unapologetic is to not be sorry about having caused someone else problems or unhappiness, even though people might expect you to be sorry. And that is actually not what we are speaking of, that textbook definition. And so I thought I would share with you something that I read from a journalist, Mary Ann Schnall, Schnall. She interviewed a number of amazing women leaders. And she wrote an article, and in it she talked about what she took out of that was an important lesson, was that the women she spoke to all expressed the concept of living unapologetically. And in it, she outlined that living unapologetically had some components to it. One, it was to be your authentic self. And we all have heard about the value of being authentic. And that includes having some vulnerability in your life and being willing to be vulnerable. Two, to use your voice. Use your voice to influence and make changes. Three, find the courage to face your fears and take risk. We all live in a risk-taking world, so I think that's wonderfully stated. Four, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month this month, so I think this is a very critical statement, which is take care of yourself. And we all know the airline example that you first put the mask on yourself before you help your child. So I think that is apropos. You have to take care of yourself. And five is lead in your own way and create change. Ultimately, in other words, being unapologetic and having unapologetic leadership is sharing your unique gifts with the world. So that being said, I am absolutely thrilled to have a panelist group that has very unique experiences and all have taken that step to be courageous and authentic. And so I'm going to ask them each to say a little bit about themselves in their company and how they got interested in D&I. So Gayle, we'll start with you, as you should just introduce yourself.
You say, don't pick me first. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So again, I'm Gayle with Arbella Insurance. I've been here for 18 years. My journey is probably similar to some of you, maybe, but I grew up in a blue collar, white neighborhood in all white schools. I can honestly look back and say, I don't feel like I was ever intolerant or unaccepting, but I didn't have that kind of exposure. So I'd like to think I wasn't, but I don't know. And I think my journey here at Arbella, at the death of George, my Boston accent, George Floyd, and all of the changes that have been taking place in our country, we needed to be part of that. So we've established a phenomenal diversity inclusion council. We work with a consultant to kind of guide us along in our journey. And, from me personally, I learn every day. We talk so openly here about people who feel different, who maybe are different, so that we can have better understanding. So again, it's, the question that we sort of asked at the beginning is, boy, will we be seen as though we're jumping on a bandwagon or starting conversations that because everyone else is? And, I guess there's no time like now. As Dr. Martin Luther King had said, it's never too late to do the right thing. So, that's where we are. We're on our journey.
Well, thank you for that. And one thing I want to just note is each of your organizations is a different size and scale, and I think in regional footprint, et cetera. So speaking to that, Evan, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey and also about your organization?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dave. And thank you everybody for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Evan Levine. I've been in the insurance business for about 23 years. The first 20, I was at an independent agent, focused in on a lot of commercial lines, did commercial line service and marketing. In the last 5 years there, I was a part of the leadership team and ran commercial lines. I joined Cleary Insurance and Bill Cleary in September of 2020, right in the thick of the pandemic. And here I do a number of things and work with all the different departments: commercial lines, personal lines, employee benefits, recruiting, the whole gamut of things to try to make it better. I'm very thankful to work for a gentleman like Bill, who is just a very open, good person, and wants everybody to be, using your term, their authentic self. And I'm very happy to be there. My journey into DEI is a very personal journey, and very similar to Gayle. Listen, I'm a white male, and I've experienced the privilege of being a white male in this world, and specifically, I think in the insurance business. And I after the George Floyd murder, I did a deep dive into myself and just realized, all the rights and all the things that I have just by being a white male. And I decided not to just say it, but actually to try to do something about it. So, that leads me here. And I'm by no means a DEI expert. I'm sure everybody in this call knows more than me, but I'm so honored to be on this panel with you guys to have this discussion. So thank you.
So thanks so much for that, Evan. And I just want to note that, we are the Boston chapter of NAAIA. And one of the things that we're really interested in doing. So when I began in the insurance industry in Boston, nothing of this kind of nature of conversation would have taken place with many different industry participants, and both the engagement of agents and different kinds of carriers allow us to broaden our network. And I think networking is so critical to success, especially as we come out of the pandemic. We'll be back at it. I know that NAAIA was a part of a scavenger hunt with the insurance library. So I think the regional engagement in DEI is sometimes different than the big national efforts. But we also go down the coast to the Philadelphia, and Sabrina, who I have had the pleasure to work with in the past. So Sabrina, tell us a bit about yourself and your story with DEI.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Sabrina Sales. I am an underwriting technical specialist at Philadelphia Insurance Companies in the management and professional liability division. For me, I pretty much grew up in a pretty racially balanced environment, but it wasn't until truly I got into the insurance world where when I looked around, it was predominantly older white male. So, we've recognized that, but over time, nothing has really been done about it. So, similar to Gayle and Evan, when George Floyd, when that situation happened, myself and another coworker decided to challenge the president of our company with his open door policy, because I feel like we missed the mark at the time when we put out our press release regarding it. So we took a challenge, we took a risk. We weren't sure how it was going to be received. And as a result of that, he was very honest and open and appreciated the feedback. And then we started looking internally, and we, from that, developed our corporate DEI council. It's been 2 years in the making. We've seen some phenomenal changes, and like anything change, it is slow. But what I will say is, Dave talked about being unapologetic, and sometimes with that, you have to take a risk and see what happens. And that's really important when it comes to DEI. It's not going to make you comfortable. The conversations are going to be hard, but you definitely have to take the risk and see what happens, because good can come of it and so can change.
So Sabrina, one, thanks for being courageous. That must have been a difficult knock on that door. And, we all have to take certain risks. But one thing I would just say is it's also good in our heads to assume positive intent. It's one of sort of the guidelines of inclusion that I know at Liberty we talk about quite a bit, which is if you do that and you assume that maybe somebody just didn't realize that they had an opportunity that they could have taken advantage. And I think you found that you got a good reception. So I'd be interested, Evan, because it's a different thing in a smaller organization. And, us that work in the large organizations have an office and a leader who is got resources and depth. And what happens when you're trying to do that in a smaller organization? How do you go about?
Great question, Dave. I think some of it is having just conversations, and this issue to me is extremely important to me, and I found that for me, it's giving me a lot of purpose, being in and really trying to make this industry better, and I'm very passionate about it. And so when I have conversations with people, sometimes it's work related, and sometimes I get into different things. And this is something that I'm very open about, what I feel. And I have conversations, we're an office of 35 people or so. And I probably have conversations with most of them about this. And just for having conversations there. And they can see it's important to me, and I'm showing my vulnerabilities about it, and they're open. So just having discussions around there. And then from there, you're right, Dave. We're not big enough to have committees or leaders, or committees and things like that. So, I've taken the step as as we would try to recruit, and we haven't been, and put on me, been successful. Me personally, I'm bringing more diverse talent. But what we're trying to do, we're looking at our, we put our, our applications online and Indeed. No longer is it the 4-year degree. I'm trying to make it, the high school degree. And frankly, for me, a lot of this is networking. And I looked at my LinkedIn about, after the George Floyd, and I got to tell you, it was 99% white. And after I started involved with NAAIA in October of 2020, I started intentionally reaching out to the network through some people I knew. And now I see through my LinkedIn a lot of diverse thoughts and people. And so now when I put something out on LinkedIn, hey, we're looking at this, I have a much more diverse audience. So, maybe it's not structured, it's not that, but, some little things that we can do to try to get our network more spread.
That's really great. And that, I think, goes to that notion of using your voice. And, I do think the diversity tent is a big tent. That's what inclusion is, right? And there's all different ways. So I'd be interested in, and maybe Gayle, you could talk about anything that you've had any success with on this, because what we talk about retaining talent, but first you have to attract talent to retain it, right? And there's the range. I mean, you could look at your own organization and you could say, we don't have enough women leaders, or LGBT community hasn't been well represented. You have to make decisions. So what have you been able to try on and execute with, Gayle, for attracting talent?
Yeah. So I think it was you, Sabrina, who said that, this is a very white male, older white male dominated industry. So, it's hard to attract, it had been a challenge to attract younger, diverse people, and even younger, non-diverse employees, just because it seemed like sort of an archaic industry overall. So we've worked hard to actually go into, we looked at our college recruitment and said, okay, really look at the schools that we've been recruiting from. They're 4-year degrees and they're not diverse. So we kind of flipped that on its head and did exactly what Evan said. And you don't need college degrees for a vast majority of our positions. So we don't want that. We want people who have the right attitude, the people that want to come in and learn a new industry. So we're partnering with more inner city schools. We've worked with Roxbury Community College for a while, and working with new partnership with Benjamin Franklin Institute, not only getting interns from there, but we also gave a large grant to help them build a new wing at the school. So we're doing a lot within the communities, but really just looking at the way we hire very, very differently. And that's all great. We can hire as many people as we want. But if you don't have the right culture to support a diverse and inclusive environment, it won't matter what you're doing. So, I have a friend who's an Asian woman who said, I've always been taught that diversity is getting invited to a dance and inclusion is being asked to dance. So that's kind of where we are now, making sure that all the people that we hire have a mentor and a lunch buddy, and they feel supported and they feel like they have a sense of belonging. Do they want to get involved in our council? So it's recruitment is obviously critical, but you have to have the right environment to support that.
Yeah, those are really great comments. And I just, maybe for the group, can you just say where you're headquartered and what the size of Arbella is?
So we're headquartered in Quincy, Massachusetts. We have 1,000 employees, about 150 are in Connecticut, but the majority we have about 650 here in Quincy, and the rest kind of smattered across the state, but we're local, home office in Quincy.
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect, because, if you look at the demographics of where you are, you have to kind of think through that as well and try to be reflective. And I think we've always talked about the power of green as a the reasons for the why you do DEI is to help with your business and business strategy and achieving your goals. So I know, Sabrina, you've had some interesting experiences with partnerships and some other things in bringing talent in. And tell me a little bit, as they say, the Philadelphia story. What have you done over there?
Yeah, so what we have found, through some of the discussions we've had on the council, getting feedback from our employees, what we realized is, number one, transparency. And number two is going to be strategic partnerships. So just recently, we partnered with Inroads. I went through the Inroads channel growing up through high school and college. It's a great prep for college students that may not get those opportunities, to show them a different world, have them experience, take them through the process.
So Sabrina, the Inroads they're all currently in college, and
yes,
they come in as an intern?
As an intern.
Yeah.
And then we reached out at our company to see if any of us, there was actually quite a few that had been to, so we were their mentors throughout the process. And hopefully they will stay with us, and hopefully we'll be able to get them a job at the end if they choose to stay with Philly. Like, that is our end game. And then also, kind of similar to Gayle, always going to different colleges that do have that diverse for their career fairs. I think most of us like what we like. We stick to the UConns, or, for us, because this is UConn Nation in Connecticut, we stick to UConn. We that's what we go to, and we don't always get that. And so just looking outside, thinking outside of the box. And I would say transparency is key. We are now trying to be more forward facing on our external website, showing people like what we're doing, some of the accomplishments we're making in diversity, equity, and inclusion, because people want to see that a company has embraced that. They want to know that if I go here, I will be included. There is some diversity, and even if it's not, that they're working on it. So transparency, strategic recruitment, strategic partnerships, I think are going to be key to us being successful, or any organization when it comes to DEI.
That's fantastic. I had a lot of experience working with Inroads folks over the years, and many of whom I think the highest level Inroads person I knew was a woman who ended up making it to the chief executive officer at the Prudential. If you Google, you'll probably find out who she is. But I just think that's a program that's been around for a while. I know at Liberty, we are doing something with historically Black colleges and universities, and a program called Excel that we bring in and have mentees. And we had a business competition with that group. So there's lots of ways to access. I guess one of the challenges, and I'm just curious, you walked in, and I know you just answered, Sabrina, but maybe the three of you guys could kick this around. What do you do when you feel like leadership, or in some cases, it's not necessarily the number one leader, but the person who is making the hiring decision? What when they say, well, I really am thinking about talent, and I want to make sure I get the best person. Maybe they're not fully on board. What kind of difficult conversations might you have if you are experiencing that or seeing that within your organization?
Dave, I think that one is going to be the hardest challenge, in the sense of, a lot of times people say, well, I hire based on talent. I'm not, and that's what I'm looking for, the most talented, the most qualified. The issue is that in all of us, we have some sort of unconscious bias that plays into it. So it's more overcoming the unconscious bias, which is also why Philly we put together an actual workshop regarding it, because people need to kind of look into themselves and realize that we do have those unconscious bias, and it gives people tools on how to try to overcome that. And I said, truly the only way, you know, I always think of, I believe it's the Chicago Symphony at one point, I don't know if they still do it, but when they had auditions, they would put down a carpet so you could not hear the person's footsteps if they were behind a wall. And so whoever was judging really was listening, and it was purely based on talent. And so it's like, how do we overcome that without literally interviewing people behind a screen? So you need tools, you need to be self-aware. But I just thought that was so great when I heard that, because you truly are going to pick the right person if you're not really looking at them, if you are listening and just looking what's on paper. But that's a hard thing to do in the world that we live in. So I would say self-awareness and training classes and development is important as well, especially in the realm of unconscious bias.
So that's a beautiful story, because I'm assuming that the outcome for the symphony was probably more women, more people of color, perhaps even some people that were physically challenged that would have joined. And don't we all want to make a better symphony and music? And that's what our organizations for business are about, is more diverse thought, giving better outcomes and better business solutions, right? So I'm curious, you know, Evan and Gayle, if you have any reflections on that comment that Sabrina had.
So if I could go back for a minute, though, to your question, Dave, because I agree with Sabrina in that it could be one of the biggest challenges, but you have to have a culture that embraces the differences in each other. And that has to come top down. So if you have a recruitment strategy that is allowing one person to make the decisions based on what they feel are, you know, the best qualities, I think we need to know who that person is and what their track record might be. So having the culture where everybody understands, like, listen, we're on this journey together. What we say is, you know, it's like getting on a highway. Everybody is in different lanes. Some people, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, they're on the speed lane and they're going fast and they can't wait to fix everything. And others are steady right in that middle lane. And you're gonna have others that are getting on that ramp and they're slow, and they're moving along and they're trying to be open-minded. And what we say is, you might not be on board with everything that we're doing, but just don't get in the way. Because if people get in the way of you creating an organization that is embracing the differences in one another, embracing diversity and creating a culture that supports that, this isn't going to be the right place for you. So there really is no room for someone saying, I don't know, I don't think this is the best qualified candidate for whatever their reason is. That's not going to fly in your organization.
Yeah, Dave, you know, this, thank you, Gayle, and thank you, Sabrina. Yeah, I think, you know, this question, I actually had conversations with two Black people in the insurance business recently. And I asked the question to them, you know, I said, how do you feel about we hire the best, you know, person, the best talent? And their answers were awesome, you know. And, you know, one person said, that's been you got the business fairly recently. And, you know, you know, internships, like getting internships at companies. And this person saw some resumes of, you know, of people interns applying to that company. And, you know, they weren't on these committees, they weren't doing this, this, and this. And, you know, maybe they got that internship because they need an internship and somebody helped them get the internship, where the person I was talking to had all these different things and had to, you know, had to struggle to get that internship, you know, and just different level playing fields. And the other person said, you know, when I asked that question, they said, yeah, you know what, a lot of times I get it, I'm 90% there. You know, I get from my manager, whoever, I'm 90% there. Where just look at Evan, you know, Evan Levine, white male, they might take the chance on it. because all right, I'm comfortable with Evan Levine for whatever reason, and so when I just like, wow, wow. And that really, that really made me think, and I just want to give a quick plug to, Arbella, and going back to top-down leadership, and John Donahue, who is the CEO president. I know him a little bit, not really, but a little bit. But going back, I felt very comfortable making phone calls on behalf of of trying to make this a diverse industry. And I called John Donahue about 6 months ago. Once again, I didn't really know him. I have a friend who owns a Black insurance brokerage in Cambridge, and he had to co-broker a lot of this business with Arbella because he didn't have a contract. And I said, all right, let me make a call. So I called John Donahue. I don't know how his cell phone, I got it. And he called me back within a day. He listened to me, and he said, all right, we're on it. I'll call somebody. And within, 6 weeks, this person, my friend, had a contract with Arbella, and so it was just very comforting to hear that somebody that's, it's not just talking, actually somebody that did it and listened and took action. So I just wanted to express that story about John.
Yeah, that's great story, because an agency appointment is a coveted thing, and you talk about structural challenges or institutional things that happen, and how do we address that? And you look at sort of the footprint in Boston, and you say, how many diverse owned agencies are there? And same would probably be true in Connecticut. It's just having worked in the territory over a number of years, I don't think that has changed, because a lot of the groups were family owned, and then they get rolled up into an acquisition, and so doing something like that is what I would call transformative change. And I wanted to Gayle. Gayle has to go a little early and may have to leave during our question period. I want Gayle, maybe just a question, like one, on a personal level, the DEI journey for you, and then also from your experience, if you were to give people that are trying to start something in their own company or get involved, what kind of advice? So those two issues, your personal experience and what kind of advice would you give folks?
So one of the first things I think a company could do is survey your employees, a confidential survey where you can ask them, do they feel comfortable in the workplace? Do they have a network? Do they feel they have an avenue, someplace to go? Do they feel that they're treated fairly compared to others? And then you have a baseline, and you know where you're beginning. I think if you can get some advice from a professional who can guide you through the process, at least initially, that will help. Understand who your allies are, who can help you, who the believers are. It doesn't matter if they're Black or white or Asian or Hispanic, as long as you know that these are people who, yes, I want to get involved, that they are courageous, as Sabrina said when we started. When you look at your businesses, and Evan, thank you for that story. I mean, we're so blessed to have a CEO who is so supportive and a leader of change. But look at your processes. Every insurance agent that gets an appointment needs a minimum premium commitment, right? Well, we looked at that and said, why are we doing that? These people just need an opportunity. So we appointed maybe 8 to 10 agents over the last year, Black agents who just needed the opportunity and the chance to be able to grow. We also took a step back and looked at our internal business processes in terms of who are we working with from a business perspective? Are we adversely selecting against minority-owned businesses because we haven't done our due diligence? Are we working with the right vendors and partners? So it's really bigger than just saying, oh, well, we're going to be diverse and we're going to have an executive team that we can put up on our website and look great. It goes a lot deeper than that. And when you start having conversations and everybody learns, that this is what happened to me in my life. And then you look at this person who you've worked with for 10 years and said, oh my God, that really happened. And you learn and you understand that that's wrong to treat someone that way. My journey has really it's been understanding and educating. And I have grown so much in the last couple of years. I talk very openly with my family, with my friends. This Diversity and Inclusion Council is, for me professionally, probably the best experience, the most rewarding experience that I've had in my 30 years of working in and around human resources. So I felt blessed to be able to participate in this, but also within my own organization to be able to walk out and talk to people very openly, change the discussions, have people share their stories, because when you talk to someone who has been treated unfairly, it's very, very eye-opening. It's just not a name on a website, it's your friend. So I hate to do this. I thank you so much for participating today. I look
Gayle,
forward to hearing.
no problem. We understand. We applaud your passion and your sharing and being vulnerable. And I would say in this conversation, that I've been in the industry a while. 20 years ago, I would never have heard people say, white males and white privilege, those comments, which are, I think hard to say and hard to analyze. So I really applaud that. And so Gayle, whenever you have to bounce out, but thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you. Send a note to the group before I go.
Yeah. And I see President Bell is asking, is being pulled in a different direction. So Christine, I saw you turn away, but hopefully you're back in. I just want to make a shameless plug here. I think the Boston chapter of NAAIA is an amazing opportunity for us all to network, create safe spaces, get to know potential future talent. Tell me a little bit about your goals for membership and where you're at, because I think this is once we get back off the pandemic, we're going to have a lot of events that are going to be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I would say, NAAIA Boston from inception, which was back in, I think, 2019, when we were really just a thought coming off of the national conference that occurred. We had an interest meeting with people who were really passionate about creating this organization in our local area. And we hit the ground running. And I would say that nothing has changed. We are still ready to hit the ground running, especially now that we're coming out of the pandemic and people are comfortable to some extent with, participating in in-person events and engaging with one another. I certainly think that the events around racial injustice over the past couple of years have certainly put organizations like NAAIA in the forefront of people's minds. And we are so appreciative of that, but there's still a lot of work to do. And so, we certainly want to be here to act as a resource to also spread awareness and also expand our networks. So, with that being said, we are certainly wanting to grow our membership. As of right now, we have 42 members in the Boston chapter. We are hoping to surpass 60 by the end of the year. Now that doesn't sound like a very big goal, but when we first started the organization, we had 25. So we're very proud of what we've accomplished so far and hope that we can continue on that trajectory. And please be on the lookout for future events. At the end of this, I think Shay will plug our social networks where you can follow us and stay abreast of upcoming programs. But from our perspective, we really love being a part of and being able to offer programs that foster discussions such as this. I mean, it's so important for us to all come together and have a space where we feel very comfortable and connected to talk about these things. It's not easy.
Yes, that is true. And NAAIA has had a journey itself and evolved as an organization, and I think it's incredibly vibrant right now. It has a national conference and lots of chapters, and so you get plugged into events. So the membership fee is worth it. And as you can see in this call, we're very inclusive. This is an inclusive organization. So I know there's questions, and we're going to switch to the audience Q&A, and I think that Shay, who has been the organizer and the mainstay behind this, is going to ask the questions. So Shay, you have some questions from the audience?
As of right now, it's quiet, but
Okay.
please, our guests, please put in the chat any questions that you have for us, and we'll read them off. In the interim, while we wait on those to roll through, you, Sabrina and Evan can continue the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, Sabrina, yeah, I just want to, on the NAAIA thing, I just going back to Shay and Dave, and you know, it has been an unbelievable experience for me, being a part of it. And when I joined NAAIA in October of 2020, I Googled black insurance, and up came NAAIA, you know, and I connected with Omari Aarons, who was the past president, and I'll never forget. I talked to him, and you know, just like, you know, I started telling my story, and he's like, yeah, and he's like, well, what, you know, and then like I said, what, you know, what can I do? He's like, join, you know, just join and listen, you know, and it was just an amazing advice, just join and listen. And I found when I joined and I started listening to the national webinars that put on by NAAIA, and I found my place, you know, just by listening, and then I can find the path maybe where I can help. And you know, I'm trying to now, you know, continue with my network to talk about NAAIA and everything. So it's just, I think it's a place that that really brings people together, and wherever you feel comfortable in whatever skill set you have, NAAIA is a place that they can utilize your skill sets. You can find your place. So it's just been an amazing experience.
So thanks for that, and we have some fun too. I want to ask Sabrina just something about culture. You know, Gayle mentioned the culture issue, and I know at Philly you went into the president's office, and what do you think is the key things for sort of seeing a transformative change in the culture? Have you seen any things that have been really noticeable, or some efforts that help the process?
Yeah, so when our president, John Glum, he has been amazingly supportive of DEI. And when, you know, we kind of brought things to him, he said, okay, how do we start? What do we do? You know, I'm getting this feedback and I want to change, but was honest and was like, how do we start? So we actually use a consulting group. And one of their things is you really do have to find the allies. You have to get the buy-in from the top down. And I think Gayle was right on when she said, you know, there's people that might get in the way. And if you're one of those people, just stay out of the way, because change. And I think another thing is being mindful that change is slow. You have to take little things, you know, DEI is there's so many different components. So you have to take the little things and then continue to build upon them. Something simple as recognizing for us that a flex holiday, we get off Christmas and Easter, and there's culturally people who don't celebrate that, but they do celebrate Ramadan or they celebrate Hanukkah. And just being able to put together a plan and saying, here's a floating holiday. People were so excited because they're like, now I don't have to worry about what I celebrate or what I believe in. I have this day and my company recognizes it. So taking it, and I think that's my underwriting too. You can't take the whole account. You got to take it in pieces. And it's the same thing with DEI. You got to take it in pieces, see where you can make the small changes, and then build upon that foundation.
That's very wise. I had a question come in, and the question was, does anybody have anything that they've seen in Massachusetts, in the Boston area, that can be helpful? Any groups or organizations that you would recommend? So I throw that out there. So I would say there's the Partnership in Boston is one that has for many years run some really strong programs that help folks, particularly that move to the area, if we're looking at Massachusetts, to become engaged and networked and feel welcomed. And so that's been a pretty successful long-term entity. I don't know if anybody else knows of any other sort of groups, but that's one of the reasons I again think NAAIA is going to be a great group, because there hasn't been that many. I don't know if there's been any others that are insurance focused or in the, aligned to the profession. So Shay, are there any other questions we have?
I got one direct to myself, and we can ask this question and then we can roll into key takeaways.
Yep.
So the question that I had was, what advice do you have for those of us who want to be allies or DE&I advocates and we aren't sure how to start? So Sabrina talked about from an organizational level, but this person is curious about for themselves personally.
I can take that one. It's actually interesting because this has come up on a personal level for me. And I have had friends who they start off with, I don't want to be offensive, but I have questions. My thing is, ask a question. If you don't understand, just say, well, I want to learn more, or how are you doing? How do you feel about this? And I think some of those questions started around after George Floyd. People want to know how they become allies. So reach out to the people that you're closest with and have the conversation with them. So I had a lot of friends that reached out to me. How do I get involved? What do I do? They wanted to be an ally, but you have to start with the people, I guess, that you trust. And work together, because it's not just a one man or woman situation, it's all of us. And also finding that safe space. So, companies now are forming ERGs where you can have those conversations, trying to train managers. And so it's going to take a long time, but my thing is never be embarrassed to ask a question, because if you don't understand, you're never going to know. So just ask a question, and there's advocates, throughout any company, usually when it comes to DEI. I mean, I sit on the council and I get questions all the time because we're that resource for people. And so look in your company, look personally to find those resources, because they're definitely out there.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Evan, you have any comments? No.
Yeah, I think, I think once again, speaking as a white male, I mean, I think, I listened to a woman, her name is Brene Brown. I don't know if that name rings a bell. She's great in the work environment, and she talks a lot about shame, and when you shame yourself, you polarize yourself and you don't act. So, I think, if you're looking to be an ally, when you have some inherent biases, that don't shame yourself for it, right? Say, okay, this is how it is, and then move forward. Because if you shame yourself, you're just going to tighten up. You're not going to do it. So say, okay, this is where I'm at. I want to get better, and I want a path forward. So, and so that's I think that, and I think, I talked to Dave a little bit, Dave Williams, after we connected, and I said, Dave, I don't know if I should be on this panel in a nice way. And Dave said, Evan, you're doing something, you're doing something. And so, and I've heard that before, just do something.
I like to say that you kind of have a choice of doing nothing or doing something. If you do something, don't, challenge yourself that you haven't done enough and feel defeated, because again, that taking care of yourself proposition, we all have a lot of challenges in our lives and in our jobs. And, so we take on with intent and passion to try to help, that's a good start. That's always a good start if you're going to be an ally. Christine, did you have something? I saw you.
Yes, I have a quick plug in
Yeah.
response to that question as well. NAAIA has 19 chapters across the country. If you find that you're looking, within your networks and not finding that it is diverse enough, or that you have someone within your network that you feel comfortable asking the question, please use NAAIA as a resource. That is one of the reasons we are here. That's part of the change that we are committed to as well, is just being open ourselves. So please reach out to us. I will put contact information for the Boston chapter in the chat. And I can certainly direct you. We, like I said, have 42 members right now. We are pretty representative of a number of organizations, from carriers to agencies, to even life and health. So there's someone within our organization that we can get you in touch with to maybe ask some more questions, or mentor, or even just form a casual connection. We would love to do that.
So thank you for that. I do have one question that I'm going to share. It was, how do we involve employees from underrepresented populations without them making them feel tokenized? And I think that's a really challenging question, and one that having been in many rooms where I was the only person of color, and you notice it, and what does that mean? I think there's a lot of individual people talk about microaggressions and things. I would just suggest that that's part of the cultural change that most of the industry has to live through, and that there will be situations where underrepresented populations don't feel like they really are being welcomed. But it is the allies, it's the culture, it's trying to, these kind of events that I think will change that. So I think it's actually, if it happens to you, find somebody to call it out with. That's the courageous, brave, unapologetic. It is to say, you know what, that wasn't right. And let me, not do it in a confrontational way, but find the proper space to raise that issue. Because again, perhaps people didn't understand what that they were marginalizing. And you see that in commentary and words where people say, oh, that you speak really well. Well, what was you expecting? So I think that was a really great question. I'm not sure if I answered it, but I leave it to Evan and Sabrina to add any commentary about underrepresented groups not feeling tokenized.
I think, I think most of us understand the diversity component. We understand the equity, but I think this also speaks to the inclusion part. And I think it's making sure that those individuals are able to fully participate in the decision-making process. My experience was kind of similar to Dave, where, I looked around and I was the only person of color in the room. And I questioned myself, well, why am I here? What's the reason? Is it because of what I'm bringing to the table? Or, is it just because they know that I'm going to be the one that is going to agree? But making sure that the inclusion part is really there, and that those individuals are truly involved in the decision-making process, and giving them the opportunity to speak and provide their feedback, and don't just assume. I think sometimes we just assume that we're doing the right thing for certain individuals, when in fact it may not even be what they're looking for, what they want. So making sure that you're asking questions and letting them be involved in the decision-making process. Thank you for that. And Evan, any comment?
No, I think you guys summed that up really well.
So we had today, I hope people take away this panel. I believe are people that are living unapologetically in the positive sense of taking some risk, being authentic, using their voice, trying to create change in their organizations and sharing their unique gifts. So I'm very pleased that that we have this panel. If they have any parting words, I just want to say to all of you, take care of yourself. But Evan, if you have any closing comment that you want to make, and Sabrina, anything you want to close with as a takeaway?
I don't have anything.
Okay. So I want to just take a moment to thank Shay Eskridge, who did a great job of doing all the work to get this organized and together. So thank you so much, Shay, for everything that you did behind the scenes. You made it easy. And also to President Bell for leading NAAIA. There's a lot of work that goes into these organizations that is, on top of the job and the day job. So we really appreciate what you're doing. And we hope that everybody who's on this call, if you're not a member, become a member. And we hope to be having some very future interesting events. So again, thank you for joining us for Unapologetic Leadership from Theory to Practice. And thanks to the panelists for their great sharing of their experience and wisdom.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.